Well, hi there. I'm excited today because it's a combination of some of my favorite topics around emotional intelligence and teamwork. How do you get teams to perform at a high level in the world, on the job, and take them from even good to great, or great to superb, or just super high velocity and getting things done, but feeling really, really good. I'm going to do a little bit of a compilation of some of the researchers and thought leaders that I've studied, and some of my own insights from being on a high performing team myself when I was at Google. And so hopefully by the end of this Pausecast, you can walk away with a couple of ideas on what you can do differently with your own team, wherever you are, whether you're leading the team, whether you're just on a team. And we're all parts of bigger teams, right? Our family is a team. We have teams that are even unstructured, which might not be at work, but things like community and all of that. So I could probably talk hours on this topic, but I'm going to try to keep it as concise as I can. And let's get started with a little bit of background here. How do I know about this? What did I study? What are we talking about? So recently I went through the Daniel Goleman Emotional Intelligence curriculum, and I was reminded about teamwork in one of their modules. And it brought to mind a lot of my own training in systems thinking and org development from my master's in transformational leadership and coaching. So even though I don't necessarily do a lot of consulting or team type work, a lot of my clients, my group coaching clients, my private clients, work within teams, and they're constantly asking me about how to handle a conflict, or how to work out drama, or how do we get these people unstuck that aren't necessarily at the place they need to be functioning, but without wanting to rip my head off my own body because I'm so frustrated. I don't think anyone's really told me that, but it's kind of been insinuated. So I want to kick things off. I mentioned the Daniel Goleman EI. It's a great training. And part of that training is with Dr. Vanessa Druskett. She is one of the contributors in particular for the teamwork module that we study. So if you don't know her, she is a great person to just be aware of and know her work. She is an award-winning researcher and teacher. She's a professor at UNH, University of New Hampshire, and has published work that we've seen across all of the top publications, whether it's Harvard Business Review or MIT's Sloan Management Review. She's part of the curriculum with the Goleman EI, and I'm sure her courses are fascinating if you're a student with her. So what I like about what Dr. Druskett talks about is just this team EQ mentality. And my understanding is even Daniel Goleman and his consulting company have partnered with her so that they can do consulting gigs for these teams, because we all know EQ is a highly desirable skill at the individual level. But what if you could multiply that and actually apply it on a team level? And that's exactly what Druskett's specialty is. I'm going to walk through some 4 high-level concepts that she talks about, and maybe one day I'll have her on the podcast. I have reached out to her, and we can hear it from her directly in other ways. But for now, I guess we're going to have to handle just what my notes are. So first things first, regarding team EQ, where do we start? And I love this concept of self-evaluation. So the first thing is to develop the norms. And what Druskett says is, like, establish the delta, right? Delta means change. It's the triangle symbol, where after every meeting, after every encounter, literally you're discussing what happened within the team, right? So what worked well? What do we need to do differently next time? And that could be someone who champions it. It doesn't even need to be the leader. It could be someone whose own role is only to assess how the meeting went and then lead the facilitation for what that is. So that's huge. How many of us literally take time out of our busy schedules and really reflect, like, okay, how did that go? What are we thinking as a team? And that's the key part. It's not just the leader doing this. It's not just 1 or 2 people. It's the actual entire team. And I love that, because we all have skin in the game. And if I know I can talk about something that didn't work well for me, then I'm going to feel pretty safe, which is another key concept of team EQ, where we develop psychological safety. And what's interesting is we've kind of probably come across this term by now, psychological safety. It really just means feeling safe enough to share within the team. So you can voice an opinion or speak up if something's not working, or there's a deadline that needs to be pushed back, but there's a safety where everyone feels like they can share what's happening with them and not have to pretend that things are going great when they know they're not going to make the deadline. We've all been on, I think, the worst case scenario teams for that one. At least I think I have. So knowing that, that's part of it. What Drescott also says, which I think is really interesting, is that even greater than psychological safety is high performing EQ teams have this sense of belonging. And I know what that's like, because I would like, just to kind of reference the team that I was on at Google, we all belonged, and it felt good because I felt like I'm in the right place. I can speak up if I need to. I can talk to the leader if I need to, and I feel totally good, right? There wasn't feeling like there was non-inclusivity, right? There wasn't cliques. There wasn't, I mean, sure, there were friends and allies, but the bigger team, we all supported each other, and the leader really oriented towards that with us because he shared the values we all have. He shared what we are doing as a vision. Every meeting, what are we doing? How are we doing towards our targets and our goals? And we could all relate and get into and understand what he was saying. So, okay, we talked about the delta. The second one I want to mention is emotional resources. And this concept's kind of interesting. I hadn't really heard this term before, but what it means is for the norm, right? So now we've got, first thing, we have the norm, what worked, what didn't work. We can build these tools, what Drescott called emotional resources. So these can potentially be things like knowing we can have 2 minutes to gripe. At the beginning of every meeting, we're just gonna share what didn't go well because we're a little frustrated right here, right? So maybe there's a free whine card. That's the one she used, right? Like a whine meaning a complaint or something, where everyone gets one and you get a chance to whine, and you give in your card when you do that. That's a tool, right? So you're not admitting or acknowledging that there might be like something that's not working, but that way it's fair. And if you use it, then we need to do something different, problem solve or move into something else. And the other part of this is, right, there might be an elephant in the room, and we know what this means, where maybe there's an unspoken, uncomfortable subject, like there's a whole team that's not pulling their weight, or a person or something like that. So sometimes with these tools, we can actually ask questions like, why are we really not doing well? Okay, we know we're not meeting the deadline, but what is underneath that? Is it a certain part of the process? Is it a person, etc.? And then there might be things like office hours for the leaders. So maybe the leaders have an hour every week where anyone can come at their desk and share or talk about what's happening. And it's a completely open forum that doesn't have potentially any constraints other than their schedule's open and you can talk. So these emotional resources, create or building them in service to the team, they are really popular, especially apparently with low performing teams. Because imagine if there's a lot of complainers, let's just say, like just total hypothetical, and everyone is complaining, then that's the wine card in full effect. And that's probably like really exciting, because that's like what people are used to. And I'm kind of chuckling here because I could totally see that happening. But the key is they're for every team, and they just give us access to maybe things we wouldn't necessarily think we have permission to do. And they're resources. So if we actually move into a place that feels like we're pretty efficient and optimized, maybe those go away. They don't even need to be there. But that's my sense anyway. But I think they are in service to high performing teams, especially if we asked ourselves, why are we really not doing well? Really, I think that's a strong one. And we also want to make sure that we are controlling at the team level what is like working well too, which I think these resources work with. The third thing that this is also Vanessa Drescott, the professor here, who's really done incredible work, is team EQ analysis. and building these teams, she talks about building affirmative environments and a can-do attitude. So that's number 3, building an affirmative outlook. So Goleman refers to this as positive outlook, similar things where we orient towards what is working. And that's training our brain to get out of these doldrums of negativity or negativity bias that's kind of just maybe autopilot style, and really asking this question, what can we control here? If there's things that aren't working, right? What can we control here? And maybe there's just someone who needs to be heard. And that's what these tools come into play as well for the wine card and so on. So if we can build an affirmative environment, and one of the things I like to think about is we could celebrate a win every time that team meets, right? So maybe the team meets and you ask, who's got a win? And it's related to, it could be related to anything, right? Just to get us oriented. But if you really wanted to focus it on the team, I think that could be done too. And you could just say, who's got a win around our targets or our project? And someone might just talk about a great call they had. And all of a sudden we're in the affirmative environment where we're already oriented towards success. And as you know, where the attention goes, the mind flows. And that means probably more success is possible because we're already orienting to it. And this is very, very powerful at a team level, Dresket emphasizes, because it builds team efficacy. And that makes sense, right? Imagine if everyone is oriented towards the positive on a team. Even the naysayers are kind of like, well, maybe it's a little begrudgingly, but they do orient towards that. I think that can be really good. And then think of the network effect, think of the group think of that, where everyone is helping each other. I think that's very powerful, just thinking about it. All right, so those are the 3 things. And then this last one is the 4th norm, which is proactive problem solving. Proactive problem solving is literally anticipating what might go wrong. I think this is super helpful, especially in the beginning with any team, whether it's an initiative in the beginning of a quarter, let's say, or the initiative of a project you might be doing, or a product launch. Like, what could go wrong? It gives a sense of control when we can name that. I think that's really big. And most leaders don't spend time on this. We don't want to focus on what goes wrong. That's a little intimidating and might throw us off course. But if we can actually do that, what happens is, guess what? We feel empowered as a team. We can jump on it right away because we've anticipated it and we can expect it. Like, oh, we already planned for this. We know that this product, this part might not have come in on time, which means we can't get the product out. So that can be very helpful. And so if you do this with 1 or 2 things in that, just maybe 2 times, just thinking about what could go wrong, like two examples, then that's actually a very powerful proactive problem solving that you can have. So those are the 4 things that Dresket talks about. The delta, meaning the self-evaluation and having someone run that. Number 2, those emotional resources, like being safe enough to say what the elephant in the room is, or calling that out, but not knowing you're not a whistleblower, but you're actually a valued member of the team. Scheduling office hours. Number 3, building an affirmative environment and the can-do attitude. And then 4, proactive problem solving. All 4 of these, I think, are so helpful. And when I think about, just as an example, so the team I'm thinking about for me was the team I spent 10 years on, the authorized buyers in Google. Shout out to Chip Hall, shout out to Jeremy Woodley, these folks who I used to work under. And what we, I think, really created as a team was a holistic, unified field, is what I'm going to call it, where we all knew the goals and the targets, because every week we'd be like, all right, how are we doing? And some quarters it was awful. We were not doing great. But then we had to say, okay, well, we had to brainstorm, we had to think differently. So we got those elephants in the room on the table. And then we always came back to our values. And then the best part was, this is funny to me, because it makes me smile. At the end of every meeting, we would stand up literally and out of our chairs, and we would take little fist bumps, each of us, you have your hands out to your sides and you're fist bumping, everyone just holding those. And on the count of 3, we would say something and someone in the team would shout something. And the research actually shows, and I read this as part of the curriculum I was studying on teamwork, is that high performing teams who have more physical contact perform better. And we know this from sports. We know this from research. And I think that it was great when I saw that, because I remember I remember that was what was talked about. Chip would mention that all the time, and we'd be like, okay, like we didn't know it, but we felt it. And then we did great. We did a lot of really great things on that team, and had a lot of fun as we did it. And it was just like one of the most successful teams. I've written papers on it in my own graduate work. And I love that. Like, I just think that we are all capable of this. So think about where you are, because there's a couple other things I want to mention. So that's the dress gap side of things. I also want to mention for you, think about a team when you were on that worked really well. This might have been nothing recent. Maybe this was as a kid and you were on a baseball team. Or maybe you are on a team now, or maybe you left a team because you were at the high of it and wanted to challenge yourself with something even better. Whatever whatever it would be, just give yourself a moment to think of that and ask yourself, what about that team made it so successful? What was that like to be on that team? How did you feel? And how did team members behave and interact with each other? And then how did you feel when that happened? What kind of outcomes did you have? I think it's really helpful for thinking about that. And as Daniel Goleman says in his program, great teams reflect. Great teams reflect on what worked well, what didn't work well, just like Druskat mentions, but also ongoing working in the business, working in the team, like within, like how are we doing? But I think if you have a model for that, if you've been on any team at all where you think it went well, it doesn't have to be about work, it could have been any team, then we have a model, then you already know what made it successful. There was another, there's a whole other field where a little tangent here, where I took a class called Team, I don't even remember the name of it. It was when I was at Wright, it was a weekend training, but it was about team engagement. And it was about how to optimize a team where all of us are skin in the game and we're doing all these things that I've been highlighting today, but it's really in service towards complete high performance. And what we did at the very first beginning part is we rated ourselves. So we went through this 5-page document where we had to rate ourselves 0 to 5 on these skills that were part of being a team. And they were based in bigger groups like management, participation, influence, motivation, and I'm sure there's a few more. And there was, probably like 50 questions that we rated ourselves on. And then at the end of the training, we rated ourselves again. And so you could see where you would end up, like, wow, I really don't reach out for help when I need this. So you actually have a great inventory of that. And then the other big learning I think is important as I reflect back on that experience was when I take risks, and apply this for your world too, like when we all step in and take risks, whether it means I step up and own something that might not have an owner, I give feedback that might not be maybe it's a little challenging because it's constructive feedback or feedback that's not about something not going well in a difficult conversation, like all of these things, the team will work better. I actually feel better because I've got that off my chest and I've contributed and I've interacted with someone who now I have a relationship with, whether it's something that person might have initially been defensive or denying what happened, but in reality, as we work through it, we build trust. And this is the psychological safety I'm talking about. This is the mode where all of us can create safety because we can know that we're all okay, that when we have that discussion or interaction, we're not going to get in trouble. And there's that belonging, I would say, too. Something else I think is worth mentioning around getting to know each other, building trust. And Druska, I heard her say this as well, is get to know the team. And I think one of the best examples I've seen for this is just asking a question at the beginning of any meeting that is kind of a round robin, where you ask the question, and an example question might be, what's your favorite thing to do at work? Or it might be something not like necessarily about anything particular in their life, but something that's relatable to the job. So, what was your hardest challenge in work that you've overcome? What's your favorite day of the week to work? Like these things you can actually apply when when it is the day. So maybe Wednesdays are someone's favorite day because it's hump day and it's halfway through the week, and Fridays are probably really popular too. So then maybe that team decides, oh my gosh, we all like Fridays. What if we did a Friday fun thing where we all wear blue? I don't know. That's probably pretty lame, but you get the idea. So then there's even more team belonging. So anyway, it builds on each other, but getting to know the team is one of the things as the key aspects of psychological safety and belonging more or less than psychological safety that I think is emphasized with Dress Kits work. All right, so I've said a whole bunch of stuff here, but what are you getting out of this for you? I think what I'd like to help you with now is determine what would you shift. This is all about me and the pausing, where we can take our facts and knowledge, and then how do you apply this is the tricky part, right? So what of everything that I've said so far today, which is the compilation of many like thought leaders, the best of in this space are telling us, right? What would be different? So maybe you don't have to do everything, right? And I think I think of the law of little things, right? Where it's just baby steps, one foot in front of the other. Like you don't need to change 10 things. Change happens with incremental steps. So what could that be for you? Maybe you decide to stand up and do a little fist bump. I don't know. Maybe you are deciding to create the norms, right? Like once a month, what worked well, what didn't work well. You appoint someone who's actually going to be now owning that role. What a great incentive for someone to take on more responsibility. Maybe they're already engaged in that way, and now you can formalize it. They're always thinking about what could be different or something like that. You probably have a sense of someone like that, or maybe it's you. And you can do that. How would you create more belonging, right? These are just questions. So just give yourself a moment and pause. Take a moment, maybe even close your eyes right here. What's one thing you can do in the next 24 hours even that could be in service to having a higher performing EQ team? Maybe it's sharing this podcast with your team that they can all learn about this. How cool would that be? Maybe you pick up one of the Harvard Business Review articles with Dress Kits work. And maybe you just journal on this. Maybe you decide you could put a whole game plan together. There's so much here, guys. I'm excited for you to have new tools to try to build this into our teams, because it's great if we got one or two thought leaders in EQ, and you clearly are if you're listening to this, my sense is. So why not up-level your whole team if you can to get them all on the same page for high performance? And it's not built in a day, right? This is change. Systems take time to change, and your team is a system. So expect time and patience. And that's where you can set the vision as an inspirational leader for them to know that that is where you want to take folks, and that they can all do have a role in it. I hope this was helpful. If it is, drop me a line. If you want to get Dr. Vanessa on here, as I do, let me know, because I'm chomping at the bit. I would love to get her here because she's got so much great stuff. And there are so many other leaders too who are interested in emotional intelligence and teams. Bob Wright and Judith Wright, who I studied with in that team engagement weekend, and Dr. Mike Swell even, I think, and psychological safety, which was a lot of the Google stuff that I took part in, and even my former managers, right? I mentioned Chip Hall, like these guys, like there's so many people that have vested their time and effort into this. So don't stop learning it. You can apply it no matter what it is. Little things. Have a lot of fun with this too, because you might see some changes that are uplifting and surprising that you didn't even expect because you just gave it a whirl. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next time.